I watched like my parents like literally age from like what I did to them, my addiction. And what worked for me is having those boundaries, but also not alienating me. And I feel bad even saying this because I don't want my parents to feel like it's like their fault that like I went down the road I did, because there's so many factors involved. My parents split up, like they divorced when I was very young. I remember being very shy as a child, very introverted, and just kind of feeling like I didn't belong or I didn't fit in. Addicts and alcoholics were very like emotional sensitive people, and I felt that ever since I was a little girl.
This is the Don't Hide the Scars podcast, presented by Pain, Parents and Addicts in Need.
Jessy Shapouri, thank you so much for joining me on Pain's Don't Hide the Scars podcast.
Yeah, I'm very glad to be here.
Oh, that's my pleasure. And of course, we were connected through my good buddy Garrett McClendon. And, that's a beautiful thing about recovery. I continue to meet so many amazing people, and it's a real pleasure to make your acquaintance.
Yeah, you too.
So I want to get into, your story. I like to start with the background, give people context. What were you like as a little kid? What was home environment like for you?
So home was good for the most part. I lived in Los Angeles growing up until I was 5, and my parents split up. Like they divorced when I was very young. I had a younger sister. She's 2 years younger than me, and so I don't really have a lot of memories of my father being around when I was a kid that often. Because right after my parents divorced, my mom and my sister and I, we moved to New York. And we lived out there for a little bit, and then we moved to Ohio, to like a really small town. And we lived there until I was at the end of fourth grade. We moved back to California. So it was a lot of moving. I remember being very shy as a child, very introverted. Um, I always remembered like analyzing stuff at a very young age, and just kind of feeling like I didn't belong or I didn't fit in. I think it had to do with like me moving around so much. It was hard for me to establish roots. I had to make new friends every time. I kind of felt like the outsider. But yeah, I was very quiet, very creative ever since I was a kid. Um,
I find that that's a common thread that, tell me if you think I'm wrong, just because I can relate to that. The feeling like an outsider, the creativity part. It just seems to be a common thread the more and more people I speak to in recovery, just especially that feeling like an outsider, like there's some reason you just didn't fit in.
right. Yeah. Yeah, I think it is. And I feel like Um, also, like another common thread is like addicts and alcoholics were very like emotional sensitive people, and I felt that ever since I was a little girl.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a very tough thing on any of us at any age to have our parents split or a tumultuous home, and um, sometimes not sometimes. It, they, there's a reason that we have a mother and a father, and when
Mm.
that's not there, it can lead to some things. My dad was in active addiction in my childhood and teenage years. In and out, and I know that had an effect.
Yeah.
For sure, for sure. So when you end up back in California, what did you say, early teen years?
So going into fifth grade.
Going into fifth grade. Okay. So we're at like 10, 11, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's tough. And did your dad ever re-enter the picture?
Yeah, so like when we lived back east, my dad would come out for like, some holidays, and then my sister and I would come here in the summer. But my dad, he works a lot. He's like workaholic. But so even when I was here in the summers, most of my memories are of being with like my grandma more, his mother, rather than with him. So, and even like when I lived in Ohio, New York, my mom, she worked a lot too, she was like a single mom, and she was very successful in her business, and she traveled a lot. So we had to have like live-in nannies and do that kind of whole thing.
Have you reflected upon that? If that had what kind of impact maybe that had upon you?
And I feel bad even saying this because I don't want my parents to feel like it's like their fault that like I went down the road I did. And because there's so many factors involved, right? But
Right.
like, I do know that like a lot of my anxiety, I think, stemmed from that, because I guess, in a way. Like I didn't feel secure all the time. I had immense amount of like anxiety going to school in the mornings. Like my stomach would hurt. Like I remember like to the point where like I didn't even like want to get out of bed sometimes, and every time my mom left for a trip, I'd feel that anxiety again, like because you're a little girl, like you want your mom, like you want to
Yeah.
feel safe, and then like, but it was just like that's like a lot of my memories were that come from that is like anxiety based, and I carried that through my adulthood, and like thank God I don't have anxiety anymore, and I can get into why I think that is in a little bit, but like, yeah, it really like played a huge part in my life for a long time.
Yeah, and I can relate to that. It's funny. I've not thought about that in a long time. Probably I'm a bit older than you, quite a bit, I think. But we didn't know what anxiety was, let alone as a kid, It's just like I don't want a feeling. And I went to this Catholic school and I just remember for a whole year, like every morning is when I first started with stomach issues that still, even as a middle-aged man, sometimes
Yeah.
show up.
Yeah.
And it's weird how we just don't understand what that feeling is, or let alone how to talk about it when we're young.
It's funny is like I remember my parents took me to some doctor because of my stomach pains, and the doctor told me like it's in your head. It's not really happening. And I never understood what that
Mm.
meant when I was a kid, I'm like, what does she mean it's in my head? No, it's in my stomach, like, and as I got older and reflected, I'm like, oh, she was talking about anxiety.
Yeah, I still get a little unsettled at time. I'll tell you, breath
Yeah.
work's been magical for me.
I love breath work. I
Uh,
just recently started getting into it, and like yeah, I'm into all that kind of stuff. Breath work, meditation, sound bath. I did
yeah.
like something called Kundalini sound activation journey. That was a whole nother thing.
What's Kundalini? I've not heard of that.
I don't even know how to explain it. I did it once. Um, it was like the most bizarre thing I've ever done. I went into like a room. It was mostly all women, and there was like one guy there, and you could tell like he was there with his wife, and he probably didn't really want to be there. But I would suggest it for anyone. So like the woman had us like start off with like like how they do sometimes breath work and like the shaking to get the energy out of the body and like some free flow dancing, like ecstatic dancing. And then she had us do this activity where we would stare into a stranger's eyes for like 5 minutes while like music played. And like you cannot break the stare. And she would talk you through like this person's life, like, oh, imagine them as a little child. Look past their race, look past their age, look past like their sex. Like, picture them as an innocent baby coming into this world, being loved, going through the trials and tribulations of their life, whatever took them to where they're at. And it actually is very like emotional, like when
Hmm.
you do that and you connect to like another human being like that. Yeah, that was actually the most uncomfortable thing I've done, but like one of my favorite things I've done because I just felt so connected after. And it
Yeah.
really pushes you to like to be uncomfortable and grow in that. But anyways, so then after that we like all laid on the ground and she plays this like music that's like binaural beats. There's something with like the hertz and frequency it's playing at, and I kid you not, like your body will start to like move. Like,
Huh.
and I thought when I saw it happening in the videos, like the previews before I went, I'm like, this is BS. Like, I need to go see what this is about? I'm like, these people are faking it. And I laid there and my body started to move. Like, I can't explain it to this day, like how the science behind it. I think it just has to do maybe with the energy flow in the room and the frequency of the music. But something happened and like it's supposedly like it's like trauma being released from your body. Like
Sure.
some people barely moved, others were like violently moving. My arms and shoulders were contracting so fast that I couldn't like wouldn't be able to do it myself. And my like abs were contracting. Like my abs were sore the next day, like I did a workout.
Wow.
Yeah, and like
Wow.
some people are having like emotional releases, like
Mm.
you could hear people sobbing, other people are laughing, like I had like just tears come down, like but yeah, like afterwards you just feel like so light and yeah, I
Yeah.
really want
Yeah.
to go do it again.
New Perceptions North, the premier drug and alcohol treatment and recovery center in Central California. A full continuum of medically supervised top quality care with programs for detox and patient residential treatment with dual diagnosis, intensive outpatient treatment, sober living support groups, and more. New Perceptions North provides adult men and women with the highest caliber of professional health care, treating each client with compassion and respect. trust in a safe, comfortable environment to begin the process of recovery to proudly create and sustain a life without addiction. Call 559-978-1507 or visit newperceptionsnorth.com.
With some breath work sessions and being in groups and I've definitely had my experience of it, but have seen other people, for
Yeah.
sure that it just the release of it,
Hmm.
it's pretty wild. And I think that's one of the exciting things about recovery now is there's so many different wonderful tools, and no knock on just on hitting meetings, are great, saved my life, but it's kind of like
Yeah.
there's a lot more you get to add now that's
Yeah.
science based, and we can point to these facts and
Exactly.
the writings. And like I just finished the book, The Body Keeps a Score, not too long ago, about trauma and that release of it and how we hold it. And
That's on my like list of what I want to read.
it's a must.
Yeah. I'm
It's a
actually reading The Untethered Soul right now. Have
Oh,
you read
okay.
it?
I've heard of it. I've not read it, but yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah, yeah.
I'll read your book and you read my book.
All right, deal. And then we'll exchange notes.
Okay.
Let's jump back to your story. So, we kind of see a picture of childhood,
Mhm.
how you are as a little girl. When does substances even approach your life? What age? What was going on?
When I moved here to LA and I was very innocent like in Ohio. I'm pretty sheltered and coming to Los Angeles was kind of like a culture shock. Um and I I didn't experiment with like weed or alcohol until I was like in ninth grade. Like my mom's father, so my grandpa, he passed away like in our house Christmas Eve, and I was there to witness it, and it was pretty traumatic, and that like really affected me. Even more so, it affected my mom, and like I just always wanted my mom to be happy. Like her happiness meant so much to me. It's funny, like I remember growing up, like every time I would like make a wish like on my cake for my birthday or whatever, and it's to this day, it's almost like automatic in my wish would
Oh,
be like, I just want my mom to be happy. I want my mom to be happy. I don't know when that started, but that was like something that's always came up when I would make a wish. Which tells me, my mom probably suffered from her own mental health stuff for a long
sure.
time. But, she had lost her mom and then her dad a year later, and that really like exacerbated her depression. And so she was in a deep depression. She kept saying she wanted to commit suicide. And so I kind of like adopted like a parent role after that, just for a little bit. Um, but even more so, like I wanted to get out of my body, like I wanted to get out of like how I was feeling. So I just remember like just always wanting to push the limits. So I like started with weed. I didn't like it, and I kept doing it. Even though I hate it, like every time I would do it, I'm like, I hate this. Why am I doing this? And then next weekend would be that again. And then started drinking, and then it progressed to like going to raves and like taking ecstasy. And that's where I really found like I was like, this is what I want, like
Okay.
that community, like the connection with other people. It was like something I kind of chased after that, like all through my adulthood, um, in the wrong way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it moved on to like cocaine, and then um, I was able to get good grades through all this, like kind of live a double life. And then I graduated, went to Cal State Northridge, and then while I was at the university, I started to get progress, and it moved on to like oxys, and then to heroin, and then to meth and the IV use. So.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a
Wow.
slow progression. Ninth grade to like first year of college, but looking back, I can see how one thing like kept leading to the other, and I just kept needing more. I kept like I never felt like the drugs I was using were enough to get me to the place I needed to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can relate to you the I don't like this, but I kept doing it anyways.
Yeah,
It's interesting in reflection, how we can look back and go, I didn't like this from the get-go. Why did I keep going? But but
right?
but we do,
Something
and
else in there like that is pushes us to keep doing it, like self-destruct, and we don't like how we feel, but we're gonna keep doing it. Like Yeah, I wasn't one of those people that did like the drugs the first time. I was like, this is what I've been looking for my entire life. It was like, this is not comfortable. And I kept pushing myself to do it until I liked it. It was just so
Yeah.
weird.
Well, I think it's a part of some of us that are very much risk takers. I think that's why I was asked not that long ago is like, you know, some really successful people that are sober now. And I'm like, yeah, I think it's we still have that drive and
Yeah,
ability in there. You know, I mean, my mind is more curious now than it has been in 20 years, you know.
right? Yeah.
It's just like, oh, I don't know how to do that. Okay, I can learn how to do that. You
Mhm.
know, it's the technology's there. It's simple. I can figure this out.
Yeah. Like if other people can do it, I can do it too, you know? And I don't know, like it's just I don't know about you, but now like that I'm like sober, I have like this like increased like drive to like experience life at its fullest. Like I just want to do like anything and everything. I'm like, give it all to me. I
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
slow myself down a little bit, you know?
Yes, I do. Luckily, I got a partner. She does a pretty great job of doing that,
Yeah.
helping me along the way. But so everything's escalated. When really for the point? I mean, I'm sure you know, went through many different struggles, not only with family, maybe legal trouble, etc. But when does the point come for you where life turns around, or you have that spiritual awakening, or whatever it is that really wakes you up to the fact you keep going, you're gonna die, and this isn't how you want life to go?
You know, I was in and out of rehab for a long time. I was using for like about 16 years and I watched what it did to my parents. You know, I've always been close to them and it just it destroyed like my it really set my mom off and like my dad was like not the same. Like it just affected my family a lot and so I really wanted to stop for them initially, but that never works. I mean, sometimes it does. Some people go in, right, for that reason, and then they stay for themselves. But that wasn't my case. Like, it was too hard for me to stay. The battle, the fight internally was just too strong. It would overpower any love I had for them, you know, and like desire to stop for them. So I just I had to keep going until I was just like done. Like, I had been arrested so many times, you know. I think what the breaking point finally was at one point, like, because you know like when I was using I was mostly like living like from place to place like sleeping on people's couches living in the back of a U-Haul living out of my car like didn't have money always had to hustle you know I've done everything from stripping to escorting to like underground poker games fraud you know like it was just always like a stress to make money and then I finally got to this place towards the end of my using where I was making a good amount of money doing what I finally was doing and I was able to get like a really nice apartment in Marina Del Rey, and I had a nice car, and I was always shopping. I was never dope sick. It was just like, I'm like, okay, I have all these things that I didn't have all during the time, like when I was on the streets and stuff. And I had like first like moment of clarity because I was like, I'm still not happy. Like I am still so hollow and not happy. And I realized then like that this would be my life. I would never feel fulfilled, you know, it was just going to be like this waste of time every day until I got sober. So, you know, shortly after that, I did get evicted from that nice apartment because those things never last in your addiction. And I moved back to San Fernando Valley, and I knew in my heart it was only a matter of time before I got arrested again because that's just what happens when you live in San Fernando Valley. So, Um, I ended up getting arrested. It was like the most trouble I've been in all of like the times. You know, I got in a high speed chase. I had like 18 felonies I was being charged with. So that was like a wake up call, but it wasn't enough to get me to stop using. I was just wanted to numb out even more. I didn't want to face what was like happening. And I ended up, you know, uh, getting in trouble again while out on bail in another county. And so instead of going, I went to court and they were going to put me in jail, but they gave me house arrest instead. So now I'm stuck at home in this trap house in the valley. I'm still using, I'm now dealing with two court cases. Um, and I experienced like my first and ever overdose, which is crazy because I was using IV for so long and I had never OD'd. And I OD'd, and my ex-boyfriend was there and he saved my life. He Narcaned me, he gave me CPR. I woke up to hearing paramedics on the phone coming over, like, and it really scared me because I thought I had like this down. Like I didn't think that was going to happen to me. And then a week later, I had a staph infection in my foot. And I was just, it wasn't like this like big aha moment. It was just kind of like all these things kept adding up. And I was like always saying, oh, tomorrow I'll go to rehab. Tomorrow I'll get sober. That was like my thing. And then finally I'm just like, fuck it. Like I called my dad. I'm like, take me to the hospital. I have a really bad staph infection. Like I want to detox. Like let's do this. And he jumped on it. He came over like and like took me immediately. And before I could like change my mind and be like, tomorrow actually.
Oh man.
Um, and they detoxed me in the hospital while I was there for my staph infection. And then I moved in with my mom like right after. So I would have like a safe place to live and while I was dealing with these court cases and on house arrest.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, that
Wow.
was that was the transition from me using to getting sober.
Thank you for sharing, and I hope that that's if there is someone that's listening and they have a loved one that's struggling or they themselves is that you know I think in our addiction we expect everything to continue to be grandiose or whatever it is. Sometimes the reality is it just becomes a decision. It just
Yeah,
I can very much relate to taking a look at I had lived enough life. I played out probabilities in my head of what life would end up looking like, and I didn't see it going very far. That
yeah,
there wasn't going to be much more of it, and I most certainly have. Handcuffs are really uncomfortable.
yeah,
I don't look great in orange. I had no idea. I had no desire to sit and play that game and be that, let alone be on the other side of a window getting visitations. It just, yeah, I just was able to play it out in my head and ask for help, just like you did. And thank goodness someone was there. I want people hopefully take that away too. When someone that
yeah,
is sick and suffering in addiction says, "I'm ready, I need help," it's then, it's right then. There is
yeah,
no, well, maybe tomorrow.
yeah, no,
Don't do that. If you've ever watched the show Breaking Bad, where there's the character in there and she promises her dad, well, we'll go tomorrow. She doesn't live to tomorrow. And
yeah,
that's a common thing. So it's a now or never, and
yeah,
it has to happen. And thank goodness it did, because I'm
yeah,
honored to speak to you today.
yeah. Yeah, my parents, like they did the tough love for a while, but the one thing that was great about them is when I was ready for help, they were always there. They didn't alienate me. They didn't like say, "Oh, call us once you're 30 days clean." Like they were there to like help me get in, like pick me up, take me where I need to go. They would visit me. Like they never gave up on me. And that really, really mattered.
I think sometimes people confuse that tough love as, yes, you're setting boundaries, but it doesn't mean you're just a total ass in every
No, yeah,
scenario.
exactly. Like their boundaries were from the very start, like you cannot live here, and that was a long time ago. And we're not going to give you any money, and it did change time to time. Like sometimes they would get more frustrated with me. They would lose hope and maybe they'd
Sure.
want to distance themselves from like talking to me. But they always came back around and I really appreciated that because it helps you not feel like alone when you're in the dark place.
If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, please call PAIN, Parents and Addicts in Need, at 559 579 1551 or visit us online at painnonprofit.org. Follow us on social media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Pain Nonprofit. And please subscribe to the Don't Hide the Scars podcast and share with others wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. And if you would like to donate to PAIN, Parents and Addicts in Need, please click the link in the description to make your tax-deductible donation today and help us save more lives gripped by addiction.
So when you do the detox in the hospital, what was after that, and what's been the recovery journey?
So living here at my mom's and my ex-boyfriend who I had been using with for 4 years at this time, he ended up going to rehab too and getting sober. and he moved in with my mom and I. So here I am, like we're all living together under one roof. I'm on house arrest. I couldn't leave except for like doctor appointments. And then I did ask the judge to allow me to go to outpatient. He approved me to go like 3 times a week, 9 to 12. So it's kind of like an IOP.
Hmm.
Um, and I, jumped into like AA. So thank God I had some friends from before that, you know, were sober for a substantial amount of time at this point. And they brought me into their sponsorship family. And so they would meet every Thursday on Zoom and in person. But since I couldn't leave, they would bring the meeting to me sometimes. And I was able to just really like build relationships with other women in the program that knew how to stay sober, and knew like how to direct me. I got a sponsor immediately. I started to work steps. I mean, I had a lot of time, so I just like threw myself into the steps. They were very thorough. I think I had like 250 resentments on my fourth step. Um,
Wow.
yeah,
That's
I,
thorough.
yes, my poor sponsor. She had to clean me all out.
And then Susie in fourth grade, she took my
Yeah,
little pony eraser and
yeah. Honestly, I think I went back. I was like petty with it. But and what's
sure.
funny is a lot of like the resentments I didn't really like. I'm like, I don't really resent this person anymore, but I'm gonna put it down just because I don't want to use. I want to be as thorough as I can. And I don't know what could take me out. What like this is my first time completing a four step. I never had gotten that far. So yeah, I just threw myself into the step work. I adapted like healthy like habits while I was here at home. I would still work out. I would like do YouTube like fitness videos and um read and just really like spend time with my mom, like get that lost time back. And yeah, it was quite a journey because during this time, like it was stressful. I had to go to court every month or 2 months, and like it kept going back and forth from what was going to happen. This DA really wanted to make an example of me. He did not
Mhm.
want to let me off easy, which I don't blame him. I had a long history, I had a few felonies under my belt already. Um, and I really had to learn to like live in faith over fear during this time. Like
Mhm.
I read this quote before and it was like this is probably not exactly how it goes, but it was something like faith and fear like both require you to believe in something you can't see. And
Mhm.
so like
Mhm.
choose faith over fear, and that really resonated with me. So I adapted that. I Yeah, I just like I really just listened to like what everyone told me to do. I just even the things I didn't want to do or I didn't agree with, and um I found like a connection to spirituality and higher power, and started adopting like modalities like meditation and praying and just like all the things. And I ended up going to court towards the end of this case, and my attorney thought we were going to get probation, but in my head I was like, how? I have 18 felonies they're trying to charge me with, like how are you going to get me probation? But I was just like, okay, sure, hoping for the best. And we get there and they're like, the DA was like, no, you need to take 32 months prison time, like if you don't sign for it now, the deal's off the table. So we were all like, okay, like I guess I have to sign for this. So I signed for it and I was bummed, like I did not want to obviously go to prison. I didn't want to like set like my life back more. I felt like I'd already lost so much time. I was 33 at this point. I started having a lot of fear, like, oh, I'm not gonna like, how am I gonna meet someone in time? So like my ex and I, like we were already kind of towards the end of our relationship. And so then my mind started going, okay, this is gonna end. How am I gonna have time to meet someone else? Like, how am I gonna have kids? Like, it just all those fears as a woman, especially with like our biological
Sure.
clock, like that started to kick in full force. I feel like that kicked in more so than anything else. And then you know, obviously my parents had other fears, like she's gonna go to prison, she's gonna use drugs, you know.
Right.
So that day was pretty like melancholy for me. When I came home from court, I did have like those thoughts like, oh, I feel so sorry for myself. let me go use drugs. Like, but I quickly got out of that. I'm like, first of all, I did this to myself, like these are crimes I committed, I'm not going to play like the victim role here. Like I had to get out of that victim mentality and take ownership, and try to look at it as like this is going to be like amends, like part of like step 9, And I didn't use over it. I was like, I'm going to go to prison. I'm going to go to fire camp. I'm going to get fit, like this. I had to change my, like, shift my thinking. I'll help women while I'm in there. So I was like in acceptance of it, and
Sure.
um, I ended up going. We went 2 months later to turn myself in, and it was like this magical thing that happened at court where my attorney was able to like plead with the judge to at least give me some credit for my house arrest days. Because at this point, I was on house arrest for 19 months,
Right.
and that was a long time to be on house arrest. But so the DA did not want to do that, and I guess it was like there was like a fine line where they don't really necessarily have to give them to you, but the judge like sided with me.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was amazing. He actually was like arguing with the DA, and the DA would finally was like, "I submit, Your Honor." Like she like shut up. It was like a different woman. It wasn't the normal DA. It was, which is another like thing. Like when I look back, I'm like, that was God. Like
Sure.
God brought this new DA the last day into court, which was crazy because the other guy never missed a court date. Um, so the judge was like, we're going to give her the credits. And then they calculated it and it equaled to overtime served. So I didn't go to jail or prison. I actually got off house arrest that day, like walked out of the court. They took my monitor off. I was free. I mean, I was on probation now, but like it was just like it was such a spiritual experience. Like, and what's crazy is when I was sitting up there and I was hearing them go back and forth, I was like in full acceptance of whatever happened. I felt like God's
Sure.
presence wash over me. I'm like, I felt calm. I was just like, okay. And then as soon as like the decision had been made, I could just hear my mom like sobbing in the background with relief, and it always makes me emotional, like hearing, like remembering, like, remembering that moment. Um, and I just sort of remember thinking, like, thank you, God, like I will not take this for granted.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Yeah. Whew, got some chills there. Yeah, that getting that ankle monitor off is a really nice feeling, isn't it?
Yeah. Have you had one too?
Yeah. Oh, it's the most embarrassing thing. Having to pick my kids up from school,
Oh,
where I'm at, it we'll get highs of about 110 during the summer, and here I am in long sweatpants to hide it, and not wanting to embarrass them, just stoked.
yeah.
Yeah, fortunately, like I think I annoyed the probie so much. Like, oh, this is where I'm going. Oh, I'm going to look for a different house. I got to get my kids from like just
Yeah.
constantly in communication to the point of where it was about a month and a half early, and he's like, "Hey, I need you to come to the office." I walk in, and he just goes, "Put your leg up," and he goes, "I don't ever want to see you here again." I'm like,
Oh my God.
I'm like, okay, are we still doing like our calls or check-ins? He's like, no, I don't want to see you here again. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, yeah, not fun. So what are we doing now? You're contributing back to the recovery community and
Yeah.
got a sober living and
Yeah, so I got off in November 2023, and then in February 2024, we opened up Namaste, me and two other women. Uh, I trust these two women with my life. They actually have a few other homes already, and I knew that they were like the right people. They were ethical. They really care about the individuals, like. And one of them, she and I have known each other since high school. We used to use together. So it was just crazy. Like, and now she's sober like over 10 years. So, and then the other girl, she ended up becoming my sponsor as well.
oh wow.
So it's just like, it's a beautiful like connection that I have to being able to experience this, and like the fact that they trusted me enough to bring me into something like this. That was really special, and so it's called Namaste. It's an all women sober living. And yeah, it's been a beautiful experience. And then I just I've been like still active in AA. I sponsor women.
Yeah.
I have four sponsees right now. I love them. Like two of them just took a year,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah.
Well,
So
that's great that you're having an all women's home. I do see that as one of those huge gaps for anyone in there, for women in their recovery journey, if they went to treatment or not, whatever it is just having a good and safe place to go, and it seems to really be lacking. So I commend you all for offering that to women. That is a very much a needed area. Like, men,
yeah,
it's like they're in abundance. I could throw a rock and probably hit three of them, real quick
yeah.
for men, but for women, especially where I live, it's scarce. It's
Where do you
scarce.
live?
Central Valley, so I'm about an hour north of Fresno.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are a few in the Fresno area, but where I'm at, there's not much for women at all
Yeah.
here. And it's unfortunate, especially if you're a mom, that
Mhm.
is like extra tough to find something.
Yeah. They did need more of that for sure.
Absolutely. If people want to find out more about you, Namaste Sober Living, what's the easiest way?
Um, they can go to our website, namastesoberliving.com, and all of our information is at the bottom, our personal cell phone numbers, and yeah,
All right. I'll put that in the podcast description. If anybody that's watching down in that area or maybe wants to get out of their area and
yeah.
get to somewhere else, I do recommend it. Um, any final thoughts, words of encouragement that you would want to lend to not only maybe somebody that's struggling or new in recovery, but maybe their loved one as well?
For their loved one, I'll start off with this. Like I said, I watched like my parents like literally age from like what I did to them, with my addiction. And I would just say like what worked for me is, having those boundaries, like with them having boundaries and like but also not alienating me. Like it was so important to know that they were there like when I was ready. Um, and then also not to think that their addiction is like your fault because I know like my parents suffered from that a lot. Like they went to a lot of Al-Anon and they learned that, it's not their fault. They didn't cause it. So I'd like to stress on that. Like I don't blame my actions on anyone but myself. And then also for those who are struggling, like I remember how daunting it can be like when you're deep in addiction, you're like for me, these were my thoughts. Like, I'm getting older. I've already wasted so much time. I have terrible credit now. Like, I have all these legal issues. My health isn't the best. What else? Like, I've lost all good connections. Like, my family, like, doesn't want to talk to me. I don't have any real friends. Like, there's just like the list goes on of reasons why I could talk myself out of getting sober. Oh, like, I have felonies. I'm not gonna be able to get a job, like there's just so many things that can prevent you from taking that first step. But like what I found with my recovery is like you take that first leap, you just go to detox and like not worry about anything else except stabilizing and getting clean. Then doors will start to open and people will be there to help you, and like the universe will just open up and God will open doors for you, that you can't see yet. You can't comprehend them yet because they're not there, but they come. And so I feel like people just like, for myself for a long time, I don't want to say people, but I got discouraged by all the wreckage I had to clean up. But it's just literally what they say, like one day at a time. I find that like incorporating a healthy lifestyle, like body, mind, spirit, like meditation, prayer, fitness is huge for me. Like I need to be moving my body, getting that energy out, like taking care of myself. And then like building a strong community around you, like women stick with the women, men stick with the men. Highly suggest that.
Yes.
And finding a sponsor, working some kind of program, just really just like giving yourself a chance and not give up before you do that because none of us are hopeless. People used to say I was hopeless. Like people were like, she'll never get sober. Like I was bad. I had track marks in my neck. I was septic. I had staph infections. I was a mess, and Here I am, like I'll have 3 years in April, and like it's possible. I was that like hopeless dope fiend, and now I'm sober. Like anyone can do it. You just got to put your mind to it and just listen to others that have led the way.
Jessy Shapouri, thank you so much for your time.